Alright, so now you probably already watched part 1. I'm sorry, I know it's been a while, but if you have, you already know what we're doing here. If not, I'll go like really quickly over what this is real quick for you. I go through the first to Fathom episodes, recounting the story the way I went through them, and I read them out of 5 using French fries. So obviously if you haven't checked the first video, go there first. What are you even doing here? Also, if you don't know what First to Fathom is about, look it up. I'm not explaining it again. Also rings the spoilers alarm because I'm talking about the stories in their entirety, so if you haven't played them, do that first. Seriously, why are you here in the first place? Before we start, check me out on Twitch if you want to see me play some horror games like First to Fathom over there. You wake up at one of those, what are they called again? Alright, a laundromat. You walk through the rows of washing machines until you find a staircase. Going down, there are just more washing machines, and this guy who's really insistent on one bleach, who actually ends up being our dad, by the way. Yeah, you wake up in a car and you may as well forget about that whole part since it never brought up again. Ever. Oh well. Your dad asks you if you're still sure you can do this, and obviously we can. You tell him that you hope he knows you're only doing this for snacks, and out the car we go. You go in the backyard, say hi to that cute little baby dog, and grab the fake rock. Not just to keep it the rock, for some reason. Anyway, we enter the house and apparently need to go to the bathroom, so yeah, no comment. Then we get a message from Mr. Carson himself, who got our phone number from our dad. He explains how he wouldn't have even asked if it wasn't for his dog, Zeke, who's been feeling a bit sick lately. While we're talking about him, he reminds us that it's his dinner time and that we need to feed him. We grab a flashlight from the closet and head to the basement to find his cat food. God, it's scary here. Then we feed the little guy and back in we go. Then Mr. Carson asks us a little favor. Apparently his computer has been acting up, which is messing with his camera system, and needs our help to fix it. I mean, sure, how bad would it be? What the hell has this man been doing? Well, at least we have access to the cameras now. Wait, what's that in the corner? Evelyn tells us that we need to watch this show with her after we're done with the computer, so we go back downstairs to the living room. And I honestly have no words. While we're watching that, Roy wants us to go do the groceries. Am I a house sitter or some kind of servant now? So we grab the money from his nightstand, hop on a bike, and head off. Alright, let me speed up the section since it's quite long for no reason. Oh yeah, you meet some of your friends there too. Apparently, our girl was just here a second ago and left. Apparently her name is Kara, but the other guy tells him that they aren't dating anymore. Nonetheless, weird interaction. We arrive back at the house and go upstairs to do a bit of work. But before we're able to, we get a message from Andy, one of our friends at the grocery stores, who tells us to look up Mr. Carson's divorce for some reason. Oh. Okay, nice, cool. Apparently his ex-wife is a celebrity and it seems like her fans didn't take the divorce too well. Right after finding that out, someone rings the doorbell at the front door, which ends up being a pizza delivery. Interesting. Well, we don't really have a choice other than going downstairs, so we open the door for him, and apparently Mr. Carson ordered the pizza for us. Thanks, dude. The delivery guy then asks us if he can stay inside for a while since it's raining. My brother in Christ, you literally drove here. You'll be fine. We tell him no, and he goes back in his car and drives off. We just enjoy our pizza in front of the TV after like earlier. Then we hear a soft knock at the door. Again. So back up we go to check the cameras. Again! And it ends up being a bouquet of flowers. Man, I don't even have the words at this point. Proceeds to have a message coming in our phone from an unknown sender asking how we're doing and what we had for dinner. Thankfully, I'd say this is where the horror actually starts, and there I say it was kind of about time. Our character assumed it was a wrong number, which is totally fair in my opinion. He does, however, still think that the coincidence is a bit weird, but brushes the thought away. Now we can finally sit down and work on our schoolwork. At 1:30 a.m., the power went off as we were doing our work. Comes in multiple other messages from the unknown sender from earlier, asking why we are ignoring them and telling us we are being immature. And the classic, fine, be that way, because apparently some guy named Todd is better than us anyway. Obviously we sent a message asking who that person is because it's sounding really close to threats now, but no answer as expected. But character thinks it's actually a prank from Turner, since that was apparently his type of thing to do. As we hear the dog barking outside, we don't really have a better choice to go outside to calm him down and turn the power back on. That's done, Zeke seems to have calmed down, but our character knows that it was easy to tell someone had cut it from outside the house. Comes in yet another message, saying that our character told them they'd stay friends. This is just starting to sound more and more sad, not gonna lie. We sit back at the computer and the protagonist notes how he had a bad gut feeling about the situation, as stupid as it sounds apparently. Checking the cameras, we can notice that someone absolutely wrecked the recording room. With nothing better to do, we do a bit of homework again. But we hear something downstairs in the middle of it. Looking at the camera, the oven has actually been turned down somehow. So our character goes down and check it out. Listen, this guy is brave. If it was me, that oven would have stayed on. I do not care. We turn it off and our character is still thinking Turner is pulling all this. Notes how it made him quite uncomfortable to think that he was in the house. But not having his contact, we had to text Andy, who answers that Turner is actually with him. Wow, shocker. This is where the game starts going really fast, so bear with me please. Our character wanted to attribute everything going on to the lack of sleep, and his tendency to be paranoid, but the only thing he could think of at that moment was to look at the cameras. But now that he thinks back on it, he should have got the cops. No shit. We keep going through the cameras until we see a woman near the stairs on them. We keep looking at the cameras until she reaches to her room. She talks to us and tries to work things out between the two of them, but of course, our character is not having it. We don't answer and she says not to play dumb with her because she knows we're in there and that they need to talk. They keep talking until she eventually starts banging on the door to be let in. We tell her we could really well turn her in for the police for this, but then she says this. Then she keeps banging, and we hide. She also says this very classic line. We then hide in the room with the washing machine and the classic microphone prompt comes up. While she investigates the room, we decide to make a run for it and skip the house. He then explains how he left the house and ran down the block. Our dad then called the cops. But by the time they arrived, she left the house. Thankfully, he knew her address. Apparently, our character met her on a dating site, but left her when she started smoking. She tried explaining to the cops that she wouldn't have done anything, but girl, come on, you still infiltrated a house. She thankfully got arrested and sentenced for a long time. And this is where Carson House heads. Alright, we've got a lot to unpack here. Now, first of all, as always, 10 out of 10 for the atmosphere. It's always super eerie all the time, and I felt devoid of any hope like in Home Alone, the first episode. But sadly, in similar fashion to Norwood Hitchhike, like the second episode, I'm not actually the best fan of the execution. It took way too long for me to feel any sort of actual danger, and I also wasn't able to identify myself to the character at all. That's just something that's important for me in these kinds of games. So that's a point I have to take away for that. Honestly, I get why this could be someone's favorite episode. I clearly see a lot of potential there, but I also feel like a lot of potential was wasted, like the dream sequence at the beginning. So with all that taken into account, I'll give this episode the same rating as Norwood Hitchhike and give it a 3 French fries out of 5. We start off with the usual yellow text on a black screen. Our character's name is Jack Nelson. This happened to him when he was 24 at the time. It apparently feels a bit weird to recount the events because of the weird and absurd nature of the whole thing, but Jack feels like it could help him process the memories of it. Jack had a small job as a park ranger in a state park. He was a fire lookout in one of the biggest forests in the Pacific Northwest. His salary made sure he could afford basic necessities, but nothing like restaurants or nightclubs. His biggest achievement was buying an RV with help from his dad, and it was one of, if not his only sense of home at the time. He actually had just gotten transferred from his previous outpost to another due to certain circumstances, which was not an inconvenience to him at all. After a few goodbyes, it was time to hit the road. And here we are in the RV. We receive a message from our sister Kayla as we are driving. She asks us if we've passed Roseburg yet, and we tell her that we haven't. The other conversation available is with a certain Mitch Scott, who appears to be our new boss. He gives us the details of what we'll need to do once we arrive on site. We keep driving for a bit until Kayla tells us to stop by a restaurant at Roseburg because they apparently have the best burgers in town. So we keep on driving until we seem to reach a small town. Eventually, we reach the diner and park our RV there before getting out and heading in. When inside, this is literally just a decor from Stranger Things Season 3, but okay, you do you, man. Trying to talk to people, yeah. I seriously don't understand what I did to these people in these games, but do they not like me or something? The waitress comes to speak to us and tells us to pick a seat, which we gladly do, but not before talking to his little fella right here with an amazing shovel. Yeah, well, can't say I didn't try. We sit down and place our order. Are you serious right now? Oh well, anyway, our waitress brings our food and this guy absolutely demolishes it. Like, holy, slow down, man. We pay and it's now time to head out and back on the road. Weirdly enough, when we get back to the RV, the door is already open. Huh. And now the bathroom door also seems to be jammed. Honestly, as I'm writing this, I'm way too tired to even care, so back on the road we go. At 8 p.m, it is now time and we appear to be arriving at our destination. We pack the RV and get out to head to the little cabin at the entrance. Oh, brother, what the fuck? Fuck, you mean one of them? Okay, this guy keeps getting creepier. Oh well, anyway, he checks to make sure we're at the right spot since he wasn't aware we would be arriving today. He then apologizes and explains he didn't realize that's how we'll be staffed for the season. He gives us our keys and goes to open the gate for us. Billy also hands us a flashlight for the heck ahead, and right as we're about to head off, he warns us. Don't go more than half a mile north of your tower. Bobcats and bears, nasty business. Alright, well at least that's one more weirdo dealt with. On to the road! After like 2 hours, we arrive at our tower, turn on the generator and head upstairs. We sit at our desk and put in the password on the computer, and then proceed to watch our training video.
Welcome to Ironbark State.
Connor, our new colleague, then talks to us through a radio. We tell him our name is Jack, and he also explains how he covered our area while Tower 11 was out of service. He tells us to light a fire as the temperature is about to drop. We head downstairs to grab some firewood. Wow, this area is creepy. Go back upstairs, there's a lot of stairs, and light our fire. Connor asked us to do a report for today as it's an obligation here. So blah blah blah, speedrun that, all that, put the details in, and we're done. Connor then wishes us a good night and heads off to sleep. We decided to do the same. It's nearing 4 a.m. when we hear unknown sounds coming from our radio. We get up to go investigate, but it seems the people talking stop as soon as we sit down. We ask if it's Connor, but only have no answer. Jesus, man, do you do anything but pee? Getting out of the cabin for the first time gave him a weird feeling. Despite Jack working in areas like these before, being left alone this time around was unsettling. Yay! Right before getting back in our cabin, a wolf's cry makes us turn around and notice a flashlight pointing right at us. It seems the person saw us noticing them and decides to flee. No, because I need to ask one question here. Are any of you normal? We start night 2 on an honestly stunning view while sipping some coffee or hot chocolate. I honestly have a deep hatred for coffee, so let's call it hot chocolate. We also noticed Connor's tower while looking into the distance, which really just proves that we're away from literally any normal, quote-unquote, human being if something were to happen. I love it here! We take out our camera to take some pictures and send them to our sister. We get back inside to put our mug in the sink as Connor asks us to answer him on the radio. We tell him we copy. Whoa! Calm down, homie! Yeah, there's smoke all of us. It's not on any registered camping site, and it just so happens to be in our sector as well. Of course it is. So we grab our bear spray and flashlight, and it's time to do some hiking. We finally get to the area at 8 p.m. What the fu- This is fine. Surely nothing bad could possibly happen, right? Like, come on, it's not that bad yet. It's that bad. Yeah, so newsflash everyone, there's a fucking weirdo hiding behind the bushes and whistling to get our attention. By the way, if you look carefully, the flashlight back on the spot at the bench, at the campsite, it points towards his hiding spot. That's just a little something I noticed. Sadly, it seems they're a bit of a scaredy cat and don't answer us. Good thing if you ask me. And we end up heading back to our tower now that the fire has been put out. I couldn't help feeling followed here. But that's probably my imagination. As Jack himself notes, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off in these woods. I mean, where were the campers anyway? They could have left us just like that, leaving all their equipment. Well, at least we're back at our tower. Yet I don't feel safe being back here either. We contact Connor to explain the situation, and this guy just can't stop being pissed at people, it seems. We still decide to go ahead and mention the scream we heard a little bit before reaching the camp spot. He tells us it smells like your red fox, but that scream sounded like a man. So what was it? Then Colin talks to us about how there were 3 missing kids who went missing as they were hiking with their family. Apparently, people think the place is haunted, and instead of doing a reasonable thing that is leaving the area alone until the case is closed, it just attracts them more to the place. Connor says he will be contacting the authorities in the morning to get it all sorted out. We do yet another report before making the recipe Kyla sends us. We sit on our bed to eat and... Wait a damn minute! Also, we were followed! Jack does seem to notice the impending doom that's about to fall on us like an anvil and goes to bed. And of course he wakes up. Because what were we expecting? Sometimes I forget I'm playing a horror game. Jack says he was looking up at some sort of weird feeling, like, okay bro, it's not as if someone is out there whistling in your ear as a way to say, you're about to die, fucking idiot. If you look around, you'll see the guy's shadow being reflected on the wall. Getting up prompts them to crouch, and it seems they're going around the cabin on the side at least to the front door. I would like to mention Jack noting, there was something very strange about that night. Like, is it just me, or is he also a bit in denial as to what is currently happening? Because, hear me out here. If you check out an empty camping site, you hear a guy's scream and then hear another guy hiding in bushes and whistling at you. The whistle then following you to your house and pretty much getting stuck in the middle of the night by the same guy. I wouldn't call that strange. The word I'd use instead is fucking terrifying. Anyway, moving on, this absolute idiot, aka me, decides to turn on the lights of the cabin. Looking back on it, yeah, that was stupid. Oh, and by the way, you hear the guy walking outside your cabin. These are some thin-ass wall you have here, Jack. By the way, opening the door at this point is instant jump scare and death, so let's not do that. You can hear what, let's be real, is a cultist work with something outside before faintly hearing them walk away. Opening the door, you're left with the confirmation that something is following you and does not want you any type of good. But Jack, of course, doesn't know what to make of it other than throwing it out. It's not entirely stupid, but I would have waited for the initial shock to go down before taking a decision, you know? Nonetheless, he first decides to contact Connor in his panic, who is obviously pissed at us for waking him up. Honestly, I never thought I'd say this in all seriousness, but womp womp. Especially considering his answer to what just happened, this guy can go cry about it. Like, what the fuck do you mean kids are messing around, homie? I don't know about you, but I've been here for nearly 17 years and I've never seen a kid tying a skull with candles and everything like they were planning a ritual. He tells us not to get carried away, and honestly this is where Loki gave up on trying to make this idiot see my point of view in this situation. He says he'll send someone to check in on us tomorrow, which thanks, considering that's kind of the minimum right now. He does make sure to calm us down a bit and tells us it'll be daytime before we even know it. At least Jack notes how he didn't make any sense either, but without any other choice, we head back to bed. The next day, he woke up not knowing if everything last night was just a dream or not. He definitely knows that something that night wasn't right, though, and that it couldn't have been a prank by some random kids. He finally understands that something in those woods isn't right and that his own life might be at risk. It's currently 8 p.m. and Jack explains how he mostly uses his time to do maintenance on his tower. Simple stuff. That how he looked at trees. Very enriching stuff. He tells us how his paranoia only kept growing while in these woods, and that it only pushed him to stay even more vigilant going forward. After cleaning our binoculars, we can notice a flare gun being fired, which most likely means the hiker needs assistance. Going inside, we can get in contact with the hiker who just used the flare gun. The hiker explains how he lost track of time, and before he knew it, the sun had set, which meant he couldn't find the path back to his truck. He gives us details on his current equipment, his clothing, and where he is. We need to choose a site for him to go in. We take a look at the map. Not really. And tell him to take the trail on the left. He thanks us as then...
I'm right here! I hear you. I hear your whistles.
Obviously, that can't be us, and it's pretty easy to trail back to who it is. Which means this poor hiker is fucked. Right before he can tell us we're freaking him out, his radio seems to disconnect and someone knocks on our door. Thankfully, it's only Billy. He seems to be the person Connor told to check on us, and somehow he keeps getting weirder. He hands us our tower supplies. Fuck you mean, bro? Billy, stop that! Other than being a creepy-ass old man, he tells us that we should have gotten proof like I mentioned earlier, and that without them there's not really anything they can currently do. Like, thanks for the help, man, you just made shit worse. We do a report for the day nonetheless and head back to bed after eating the leftover casserole. But before we do that, we need to get word from downstairs so we don't freeze to death. Oh, what the hell, man! Apparently we don't need to be alarmed at all, as this lovely gentleman is simply a worker doing maintenance on a radio tower. His name is apparently Silas, but we can't quite be 100% sure since he says, and I quote, "Names can be deceiving." He's apparently here every Sunday. He makes sure the communications reach the right places. He seems to have some questionable beliefs as well. Hold on. How does he know her name? He also tells us farewell, which makes it sound like he isn't planning on seeing us again. Jack notes how he gave creepy vibes. Which, yeah, no shit, man. Now that our fire is lit, Connor has apparently been trying to contact us for a few minutes now. We let him know about Silas, and he seems to have no clue who that is. We make him aware he is the person working on a radio tower, which Connor follows up with this.
Just about yesterday. You trying to yank my chain now? That radio tower's been out of service for ages now. It was closed down years ago after a lightning strike fried its systems, and its repair cost was deemed too costly. Its repair date was postponed until the next big funding, which is no time soon, according to Mitch.
So yeah, that idiot is a fraud with a mentality that setting stuff on fire purposely is a-okay. Connor tells us to take a photo or his info next time we'll see him, and heads to bed. We do the same. Jack seemed to have a paranoia that wouldn't stop growing. He tried to tell himself it was simply the new environment, but everyone with a working and functional brain can see something isn't right in that forest. Jack's decided that, so far, what he's seen isn't enough to send the alarm bell in his head. But apparently, that wouldn't last too long. 2 nights pass, and it's rainy outside. I love rainy weather. Connor contacts us to let him know computers need to update, so we struggle for like 20 minutes to actually update the computer, and right as it finishes, I guess the computer killed the generator. Or it's out of gas. But we don't have a choice anyway, we turn it back on, and surprisingly, no one jumps us. I honestly thought we would die here, to be honest. As we head back up, the screen fades to black. A week passed. Connor's generator was under maintenance, which meant we'd have to cover his area for the time being. Only thing Jack was doing, other than looking out for any fires, was pay Connor a visit twice a day to make sure he was okay. Poor guy even talked to himself. He wakes up at 2 a.m. as per usual. Do we ever get a good night's sleep in this place? Seems like Connor is able to speak to us on his radio despite his generator, and lets us know we're gonna want to have a look at this one, insinuating a fire. We get up to talk on our radio. Apparently Connor, who hasn't been doing anything the past 2 days, doesn't have the strength to deal with whatever is going on without telling us anything, by the way. Apparently he's seeing more smoke from where he is. We tell him we'll check it out, grab our binoculars. Connor tells us he's going to bed so we head out anyway. And I don't think poor Jack was ready to see what the campers actually were. Of course, he didn't possibly know what to do at first. His only thought was to take evidence like Billy and Connor had told him to before. But of course, this is a horror game, so nothing works out properly. And he forgets to take off the flash on his device, which means they notice us. And they are now making a sprint towards a tower! We head under a bed in a panic. By the way, Peep the microphone mechanic making another appearance. The cultist inevitably reaches our stair and then our door, proceeding to break it down and look for us before leaving the cabin. With Jack's heart beating in his chest, we have no other choice but to make a run for it. As we are about to head down the stairs, we realize quickly how the cultists outplayed us and waited for us to leave. We sprint downstairs and with no other choice, hide in our disposable toilet. No comment, as per usual. The cultist thankfully loses track of us while running down the stairs. He looks around before going to the equipment check, and that's when we realize it's time to make a run for it before he decides to look in our hiding spot. We run all the way back to the parking lot. Billy is in there, but that's not important right now as the cultist is hot on our trail and they won't leave us alone until we're finally dead and they can retrieve the proof we have on us. Jack runs to his RV and doesn't hesitate for even a second to press on the gas and get the hell out of there. Jack eventually drove all the way to the nearest ranger cabin. He sent a message through the radio to HQ, but of course, no one believed us. Look, Jack, we all get a little stir crazy out here, Mitch told us. Apparently, the next morning, the authorities did a little check on the area, but as expected, there wasn't anything. No one ever believed Jack, even his family. Everyone blamed it on his isolation, despite not ever being the lying type of person. Just stick to looking out for fires, but we all know damn well Jack is never going back in those woods. The unease still sits heavy in my stomach. Even though many years have passed, the experience still feels vivid in my memory. My family thought I was making the whole thing up, which is really out of my character. But I know what I saw. Real or not, after dark, these woods can become a heaven for illegal activities. So if any of you plan on going camping soon, please be safe. Alright, we have a lot to unpack here. First things first, my rating is probably unexpectedly a 5 fries out of 5 for this one. Ironbark Lookout is my favorite episode for a multitude of reasons. I mean, first, there are so many subtle details, the whistling being one of them. It's something that adds a lot to the story that yet many will not notice anyway, but once you do, you realize you're absolutely fucked. And like many other episodes, you're alone. No one can help you and no one will either. Also, I'm sorry, but that scene where he took photo evidence is just iconic, honestly. The fact we already met Silas before, he jump scares us as well. Remember that guy at the diner with shovels and everything? A theory I've seen going around is that he is the one in our bathroom with the RV after we get out of the diner. But enough rambling. We have one more episode to go through. We wake up in an office and need coffee to get through the day, which I'd refer to as night, mostly. We head to the office small kitchen to prepare a coffee, and I honestly can't believe they made the gameplay of this so detailed. Our protagonist, who is still unnamed at this point, then needs to head to the bathroom. Bro, what the fuck? Why is someone walking in here right now? It's like at least 9 p.m. Bro, I swear to God! If I had a nickel for every time this happened, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird it happened twice. Okay, so apparently this janitor likes to clean late because it's more quiet. To each their own, as they say. Anyway, we sit back at our desk and our phone starts ringing. It's our college friend, Mike, who's been calling us for the last 2 hours. Listen, I don't judge, but at some point when someone doesn't answer, shouldn't you like stop calling? Could just be me, though. He asks us if we had time to book the rental for a trip. Not without being weird again, of course. Anywho, he proposes we make the drive over to the rental with him since we both live in the city. We say yes and hang up, then proceed to rent a cabin for less than $100 a night since our other friend Nora is on a tight budget. Hey, I'm assuming you get hundreds if not thousands of stories sent daily, so I'll give you a basic rundown of something that happened to me. When I was in my early 20s, I worked at a big consulting firm in my city. Life at the firm was a constant juggle of deadlines, client meetings, and trying to prove my worth. The job paid well, sure, but at the expense of my mental peace. I'm Sydney Harper, and this story takes place during one of those days. One of my college friends, Mike, suggested that we take a weekend getaway to rural Vermont, which sounded like a perfect break from the cycle of work, and my other friend Nora was quick to jump on board as well. We now find ourselves 2 days later in an elevator with this guy who I'm convinced is playing Kingdom Hearts Birth by Sleep, but that's not quite the subject. This is actually our neighbor from the 8th floor, who's a software engineer. We wish him a good day and get out of the elevator, and walk towards Mike's truck. We give him a very forced hug, which apparently isn't good enough for him. Sydney tells him she just wants to make sure he doesn't smell first, and bro apparently soured first just for this occasion, which honestly I'm scared about. We decide to hug him again, however, then put our stuff in the back of his truck before heading off. We're now on the road and it's starting to snow a bit. Mike and Sydney have a conversation about life, their jobs, and everything. We get a message from Rick Wilson, aka the person we rented the house from. He's just checking in with us to make sure we're okay and wondering if we'll arrive safely. Sydney tells him that the snow just slowed them down and they should arrive around 6 p.m. The drive stays peaceful until a deer walks in the middle of the road. Thankfully it runs off. Mike tells us how in Native American lore, seeing a deer like what just happened to us is a message from the universe. And that's the end of it. Like, he doesn't continue that at all. He just says that, like, ominously, and then just stops. It's now 5 p.m. and we reach what seems to be some kind of small town. Mike points toward a pizza restaurant, which means it's now time to engage the mission. Feast! We get out of the truck and Mike holds the door of the restaurant for us. Thanks, homie. Bro, is that queso? We go ahead and order slices before sitting down. All is well until we receive a message from Nora. Sadly, she has to leave way later than originally predicted because a client is holding her back. We tell her to be careful on the road with all the snow. I also really want to punch Mike currently, but I don't think that's the subject. Anyway, our pizza is finally ready, so it's now time to feast. With the men enjoy eating sounds, of course. Anywho, as we are eating, this person who appears to be a hitchhiker greets us. I'm having flashbacks right now. He explains how he is heading down the same road as us, then asks if we can hitch a ride. We obviously ask where his car is, but he answered that he doesn't need one as we are here anyway. Sydney tells him why the hell not, but Mike, however, seems a bit more opposed to the idea and proceeds to tell the hitchhiker that we only have 2 seats inside the truck. That seems to make him a little bit on the edge, saying he'll fit anywhere and pretty much begging us to let him in. But like we already told him anyway, we don't have space for him. Moreover, this is Mike's truck and we can't really make the decisions like that. He gets aggressive, because of course he does, and we apologize to him again. Apparently, in his eyes, we're real assholes for that, however. Mike asks if that is threat, and he seems to calm down and explains he's just cold and tired before walking off. Mike seems pissed that we considered letting him in, but we were just honestly trying to help anyway. Our pizza is now finished and we throw away the box before arguing with Mike over who should drive the rest of the way. He eventually lets us drive and we're back on the road. We drive through the snow, and nearly miss the house for that matter, before parking. We head to the front porch and input the code for the key that Rick gave us through text. By the way, the sound here is really creepy for some reason, like listen to this. We unlock the door and finally head in, away from the cold as the snowy winter outside. Probably due to the pizza though, Mike needs to head to the bathroom, so we put the groceries in the fridge in the meantime. By the way, if you walk around the house, you can see the little fire thing. I promise you I can speak English. Already has burning wood in it, almost as if someone was here recently. Now that our groceries are in the fridge, Mike comes out of the bathroom and we also go as he starts unpacking some of our bags. As we pee, we text Rick to let him know we finally arrived. We get up and wash our hands before heading out of the bathroom. We decide to explore a bit of the house with Mike while we're at it, and head upstairs after checking out the basement and the downstairs area, until we can hear some noise from what appears to be the bedroom. Turns out this is actually Rick, the owner. He explains his presence by telling us he was looking for his lost cat, until he remembered the TV in the bedroom was having some issues. He just thought he'd fix it since the last renters left a bad review about it. He gives us a tour of the rest of the house, and Sydney says herself how he already made them comfortable really, really easily. The rest of it was perfectly fine until we're going back up from the basement, and he says this. Oh, well, at this point, I feel like that's the most normal thing I've been told in one of these games, to be honest, guys. Before he heads out, he asks us to remind him what her name is. Why are all the guys in these games so weird, man? We head upstairs to shower while Mike tries to find anything to watch on the TV. We shower and head back downstairs, and Mike approaches us with a fishing rod. And that's when he proposes we catch the dinner ourselves. Now, I'm not really the type of fishing guy, but in video games, count me in. This part also starts the most cozy OST I've heard in a very long time too. I also like the fishing mechanic, and it's honestly not something you'd expect in a horror game of all things. Anyway, we grab some cheese bait and we start fishing. We need 3 carps for dinner, and it's honestly not that hard, surprisingly. The mechanic can just be surprising at first, but once you got one fish, you're kinda good, honestly. We acquire our 3 carps and head back inside to get to cooking. We prep the marinade while Mike cleans the fish. Then we put the fish plus the marinade in the casserole and the vegetables after Mike is done cutting them. Mike proposes we play a board game while waiting for the fish to cook. And here we get to actually choose either Ouija or a Jenga ripoff, since he refuses every single other one. For the video, we choose the Jenga ripoff, but I'll quickly go over what happens if you choose Ouija. You both hear rustling in the basement as you're playing and Mike runs off. That's it. That's literally it. Mike ends up losing this tower stack game because, of course, I'm just better, obviously. We grab our plates of fish before watching the exact same show as most of the other episodes, and as usual, no comments. As we finish eating, Mike heads upstairs to check some emails when we do the dishes. And so we get kind of a cryptic message from him, worried that someone might be under his bed. Like, okay, are you 5 years old? We head upstairs per his request, and he jump scares us. Gee, it's almost as if I was expecting it, Mike. Then he decides he wants to play hide and seek, of all things, so we start off by hiding under the stairs. He inevitably finds us, and he goes to hide in the closet of the bedroom upstairs. Once we find him, he seems to think that something is hiding in the attic, and this big-ass pussy is too scared to go up, and excuses it by saying that his shoulders are too broad to fit. Oh well, we go up and we find the cat Rick was looking for. We go back down and tell Mike of our discovery. Now that it's our turn, we hide in the shed outside. Until he finds us, he asks for one last round because I guess he's obsessed with hide and seek or something. As we're looking for him upstairs, we hear some type of clanging noise. We head toward the noise until... Oh, come on, Sydney. No need to be scared. It's just good old Rick. After our scream, Mike comes running in. We, rightfully so, ask Rick what the hell he's doing back here, and he explains that he's simply fixing the faucet and asks us if that's a problem. We tell him he should have at least made us aware of his presence, but he answers that we are in his house and that he can do whatever. We ask him if he can possibly fix it tomorrow. He asks us if we are telling him to leave, but Mike feels the need to chime in and explain that we rented the house and would like to have what we pay for. Even threatening to call the police. Rick answers that there aren't any cops in Woodbury, which, wow, okay, reassuring, man. Rick seems not to enjoy us rightfully asking him to give the renters of a house some privacy and leave through the front door. Follows a little monologue from Sydney quickly explaining what happened next. Sorry, y'all. Throat dying. After locking the door, we debated what to do. We agreed that there was something off about Rick from the start. It seemed like he enjoyed making excuses to come over unannounced. In the end, we decided Rick was weird, but probably harmless. We attributed his behavior to an extreme lack of social awareness. Look, we already drove all the way out here, let's just enjoy ourselves, Mike said. But by this time, I was feeling really tired. I decided to get some rest. It's almost midnight now, and someone knocks on our bedroom's door. It's actually Mike, who can't seem to give us 1 second of alone time. He comes into our room before stopping near the window. He comments on how the storm seems to be getting worse out there. We comment on how we are quite scared for Nora having to drive all alone out there, but he explains that he'll protect us instead, aka Sydney. It really seems like he couldn't care less for Nora here, and I honestly wasn't sure how to feel about it. And then he goes on and on about how guys are supposed to protect people and blah blah blah, like, okay, alpha male giga chad, I hate myself for saying this, get out of here. He then says how this wasn't how he expected the trip to go. And trust me neither, bro. He keeps ranting a little about Rick and everything before sitting in our bed. It honestly seems like Mike has something for Sydney and he resumes his weird advances. And then he mentioned the trip he and Sydney had in Oregon, which we know nothing about, but it would appear that something happened then that made Mike to be led on that Sydney might reciprocate the feelings. Sydney explains how things happened after a few drinks, and Mike says he hopes it can happen again. It's left ambiguous, but it's not really hard to guess what they mean. Thankfully, a new message from Nora saves us from the uncomfortable situation. She appears to have a blown tire not too far from Woodbury and asks us if we can come get her. Mike complains about the timing, when in my opinion, it was obvious nothing would happen. He tells us to stay here instead, and now he'll go get her so we can rest. Not without being a bit weird, of course. We head downstairs, give him yet another forced hug, before closing the door behind him and locking it. We then head back upstairs to get some rest like Mike suggested. I told myself things would get better if I could just get some rest. Nora always knew how to cheer me up, and I needed it more by the minute. With her arriving soon, I decided to rest in the meantime. Nearing 1 a.m., we hear the doorbell ring, which wakes us up. The doorbell eventually shifts into agitated knocks, so we check it out, wondering who the hell it could be at this hour. We check for the blinds, and we notice it's a hitchhiker from the pizza restaurant from earlier. He tells us how he's in a very bad spot and needs our help. He explains a bit more and explains how his friends are running late and can't be here for another 2 hours. We tell him to sit on the porch, but he's insistent on coming in. We tell him there's no way in hell he's coming in, and he gets aggressive again. He tries to guilt trip us, but dude, you kinda did this to yourself. He calls us a bitch, of course he does, and he apparently saw us fishing with Mike earlier. I'm not sure why they all think we're dating, but that's not the point here. We tell him we'll call the cops if he doesn't back up, but apparently it is true that cops aren't around in Woodbury. We tell him we're dialing 911 anyway, and that seems to make him go on his way. Not before telling us something though. But let me tell you something. You'll get what's coming to you for leaving me out here. Sydney honestly seems to not give two shits about the guy and goes back to bed. But not before we hear some kind of trapdoor and a scream from him from outside, and then something seems to land on our window, which appears to be a snowball. Without any other choice, we decide to text Rick so he can come back to the house. We text him explaining the situation, and eventually, he does! We let him in and explain the situation. He tells us he came as quickly as he could, but that we shouldn't have to worry about it any longer. He also asked us where Mike went, and we explained how he went to pick up Nora, but apparently, all he picks up on is how we're currently alone in the house. We let him know they'll be back soon, though. Side note, he still has his hammer from earlier in his hand. He heads to the living room to warm his hands next to the fire. Storms like this bring out all kinds of folks. Not all of them know when to stay away. Then we receive a message from Rick. Come back over? What do you mean? I live in Burlington. I haven't been to the rental in weeks. We reluctantly exit the messages panel and Rick comes to talk to us. Oh my god, we are fucked! I'm gonna let the rest of this part play out. Enjoy. He jolts for the front door and uses his hammer to remove the handle. Now here, actually, in most playthroughs I've seen, the player gets confused and stares at him wondering what he's doing. I actually did that myself and it results in a game over. What you actually need to do is head back to your hiding spot familiar under the stairs in the basement. He eventually heads into the closed off area of the basement and we can hear the sound cue telling us it's time to make a run for it. And the text tells us as well. But as we're heading up the stairs, Nora seems to be calling us, which alerts him. We sprint upstairs into the bedroom and hide in the closet, but not before taking a little bench, and thankfully he seems to have lost us once we are inside. We put down the bench like earlier, but we can't head into the attic just yet. He eventually comes in and looks around before we hear the doorbell ringing. He looks at the window and seems to notice our friends. Then, the same sound cue telling us it's quote-unquote safe comes on again, so we head into the attic. Which seems to have been a good choice as Nora calls us again. How have we never even seen her and she just causes more problems for us? And it alerts him again. We stay hidden as the doorbell keeps ringing, before we inevitably hear the police sirens and people shouting outside. Rick runs out of the closet and we receive another message from the real Rick this time. Are you alright? Just got done talking to the other guests on the phone. I've called 911. And this is when we understand that it's finally truly safe. As we exit the closet, the end music starts playing, which means the episode is truly over. As we reach the bottom of the stairs, we can see the fake Rick escape from the back door. Mac breaks down the door and the screen fades to black. I told them everything that happened after Mike left. Rick had called the cops. The storm had quieted down by the time they arrived, and of course, the man was nowhere to be seen. On our drive back, the night played over and over in my head. We think that the man we saw secretly lived in that cabin when it wasn't being used, and planned on robbing us during our stay. But cops seemed to think there was more behind this man's action aside from just robbing us. Rick asked me what the man looked like, and then after that, didn't ask any more questions. We think he knew more than he was letting on, but in the end, he gave us a full refund. And just like that, credits roll in. Okay, just like Ironbark, we've got hella stuff to say. First things first, if you hadn't noticed, they brought some YouTubers to voice act, like in the previous episode. Queso is the new reporter, and Lily Pichu as Nora. Honestly, I think that's a nice touch to make me laugh once I realized who was really talking. Also, one thing I haven't touched on for the other episodes inside, it hadn't really struck me too much, but like I mentioned in the fishing segment, the OST is like actually amazing. In moments like after hearing the scream outside, the pizza place, and a lot of others I enjoyed a lot. Also, being accompanied by someone who kept making advances at me the whole time despite clearly not being interested made me really uncomfortable, and it worked well to set the tone. Same with the plot twist. Go watch the VOD of it if you haven't. I literally shit my pants when I understood what was going on. My only real issue with the episode is kind of the pacing. I understand to make the episodes longer, they gave us the pizza restaurant segment and all of the driving plus the office and everything, but at some point I really wanted the story to actually start. That's honestly my only real problem though. With all I've just said, I'll give this one a very well-deserved 4 fries out of 5. Woohoo! That was a wild ride, wasn't it? If you're interested, here's what a tier list of the episodes would look like in my opinion. Feel free to share your personal rankings down below. I definitely feel like some of you are going to flame me about giving Carson House such a low ranking. But nonetheless, I want to thank the team behind the episodes for making quite literally my favorite horror game franchise, and I would like to thank you for watching this video. I had a blast making it, and I hope you enjoyed watching it just as much. With all being said, I'll see you on the flip side.